Hey everyone, welcome into the first August edition of Celtics Beat. It's great to be here with you. Of course, last week's show, I thought we were going to do a lot of what we're about to do now, but with the, at the time, very timely, but obviously unfortunate passing of the legend, the GOAT, the greatest, Bill Russell. We had Cedric Maxwell. We had a great talk about Bill Russell and his impact on all things basketball in the community and beyond. If you haven't caught that last show, I encourage you to go back, check it out, whether you find us on iTunes or Stitcher or the YouTube feed, wherever it is. It was a really good discussion. And we'll get to that in a little bit later on in the show, maybe with our guy, Steve Bulpett, kind enough to join us here in the off season. Steve, how are you?
Warm.
Yeah, it's well, at least you're inside. I hope there's some AC. It's if we were doing this yesterday, when at least in our neck of the woods it was roughly 100 degrees and you were sitting out on your deck or something, that would have been really uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, we're hoping the sea breeze kicks in. That's what we're waiting for here. Yeah, afternoon breeze usually.
Today's show, and of course Evan's here as well. Ev, good to see you as always. Today's show, the real focus is to Kevin Durant or not to Kevin Durant, and we're going to touch on every angle of this thing, including, of course, the validity of it. That's one of the overarching themes of this. So if you feel like, oh man, we've been doing this for weeks, haven't we? Like, we've heard this before in other places. One, we haven't done it. And two, I think we're going to hit a lot of angles that have not been discussed yet. So do bear with us and stay with us because, I find this, even though, just to put this out first, I do not think there is any Kevin Durant-Jaylen Brown swap that is going to happen. So, I guess you could argue we're wasting our breath because I don't believe that trade we're going to have like a Kyrie Irving to Boston in August type of deal. That's not going to happen. But I do find it a fascinating topic. And, obviously, Steve here, one of the reasons that he's here is, well, there are a bunch of reasons. One, a wealth of knowledge on the NBA and the Celtics and has been for decades, but also wrote very recently about this topic. And you can check it out on his Twitter, on heavy.com. And one of the things that you reported, Steve, in talking to your sources is that there was a looming meeting between Kevin Durant and Nets ownership, to discuss his future. I guess just to start us off, do you know if this meeting has taken place yet?
Excuse me, I do not. And I want to apologize to anybody watching this, right? My frequent reaches for something to drink here, just coming in from a workout.
He was a beast.
Anyway.
He just needs to hydrate up. That's
yeah, seriously.
Interval training.
Yeah, not too bright. But no, I do not know if the meeting has taken place yet. And I do not know what the point of the meeting will be if and when it occurs. I'm not sure, who asked for it and what the plan is, what the desire is.
Well, if the plan and desire, I would think more so from the Nets perspective than Durant's, because obviously Kevin Durant is the one who has requested the trade pretty publicly at this point, or at least the public interest. It would be to smooth out his future and keep him in Brooklyn. I would think that's what the Nets want anyway. So if you were to handicap the odds on Kevin Durant's future in Brooklyn actually being there when next season tips off in a couple of months, what do you think versus him landing somewhere else?
I think in terms of him being a Brooklyn Net at the start of the season, I'd say about 80%. And that's not basically because I think it's just really hard for the Nets to find the deal that they want. Pretty damn impossible to find what they're asking for. A couple of stories ago, I believe it was last week, I wrote a story with the point being that if you trade for Kevin Durant, that basically means you're going for a championship now. Mm-hmm. You're not trading for Kevin Durant as part of some long-term rebuilding plan, right? So if you trade for him and you have to give up a lot, the big question then becomes, do you have enough left after you give up what you need to get him? Do you have enough left to compete for a championship? So supposedly there have been reports that the Nets want from the Celtics, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, like 4 first-round draft picks, the Custom House Tower, City Hall Plaza, a couple other things to be named later.
Yeah.
And if the Celtics would ever do that, are they a championship team afterward? So it's like, I think that's the issue that a lot of teams that perhaps want to get in on this are finding. So I think, I know I wrote this about a month ago or more, that if you see a trade go down, when Kevin Durant gets moved, it's most likely going to involve a third team, maybe even a fourth. It's going to have to be something creative.
So I'm glad you brought all that up, because that's, and I've tweeted this out a bunch of times as well, and I've alluded to this on this show when we've had time to talk a little bit about it, is that's sort of the aspect, Steve, that pisses me off about this whole thing. Everybody talks about it like it's Jaylen Brown for Kevin Durant. You talk about the age. Well, Jaylen Brown is 8 years younger. Well, Kevin Durant, he's still one of the top 3-5 players in the world, however you want to classify him, and no signs of slowing down except for obviously injury risk and blah, 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 blah. And people discuss it like it's a 1-for-1. And quite frankly, even if it were a 1-for-1, I could find a way to argue against doing the trade if you're the Celtics. But it's not anywhere near a 1-for-1, as you talked about. Whether it's the reported offer from the Boston side of Derek White and a first-round pick and maybe Grant Williams or somebody like that, or like you said, the reported asking price from the Nets being Brown and Marcus Smart. Oh, by the way, the defensive player of the year, and maybe another piece. And obviously all those picks coming up in the future, whether it's first-round picks outright or first-round pick swaps or some combination. I don't think that just by getting Kevin Durant, and there's a lot of talent, there's a lot of name recognition there, but I don't think once you're giving up a package like that, yes, you're still a championship contender, of course, you're still in the conversation, but I don't believe you are a better team or nearly as deep a team or as hopefully healthy a team as you are sitting on paper right now today, August 5th. I don't. I think that the Celtics are in a really good freaking position right now, and a minor blow up, if you will, and maybe a major blow up if you're talking about two of your starters, one being a fringe borderline and certainly future all-star who has been an all-star before in Brown, and defensive player of the year and all defensive first team player in Marcus Smart, who is not slowing down either. You're really changing the makeup of what you're doing as a team and the defensive identity that got you to the finals in the first place, and on and on. I'm rambling, obviously. To me, like when these reports started, it did not make a whole lot of sense to me, other than the fact the Celtics have coveted Kevin Durant since before he was drafted.
Yeah, look, Kevin Durant is a generational talent that if you have an opportunity to get him, you've got to investigate it as best you can, and really, search that out as best you can. But I think the larger question for the Celtics is, when you look at what you have now, is it enough? And when you look at the problems that you've had with this team and the shortcomings, are they shortcomings that you can overcome? I mean, the reason they lost in the finals is strikingly similar to why they lost in 2018 Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals. It's why they lost in 19. It's why they lost in 2021. That was a weird year. That wasn't going to happen. But it's the same stuff. And I know we've dealt with these subjects before in our conversations, but that's what it comes down to. Is this team, is it going to overcome its issues? Is it going to overcome the going 1-on-1, which becomes 1-on-2 and 1-on-3 whenever crunch time happens? When things get difficult, their reflex is to turn away from the stuff that got them leads. This team, as much as everyone says, well, they swept those Nets in the first round, it was ridiculously close. And, that's, you've got to look and say, is this team going to be better? I think it will be. I would answer those questions in the affirmative, but they are questions that you have to ask.
Can I push back on that for a second, though? Because
Sure,
acquiring Kevin Durant would solve, I think, a lot of their issues. Like they wouldn't have as many turnovers in the fourth quarter. They'd have someone they can give the ball to. in the half court that can make things easier for them. Acquiring KD, if presumably if he somehow stays healthy the whole season, which he has been able to the last couple of years, it does solve a lot of their problems. He is a guy that, in a half court offensive set where things are getting bogged down, you now have two guys at the end of a basketball game between Jason Tatum and Kevin Durant that could really get some things done in the half court, whether they're going one-on-one versus somebody or trying to, spread it around. The thing that would be tough is you'd be adding a giant piece to a machine that, was starting to kind of find its sea legs a little bit and trying and starting to really figure out who they are. Now they reverted to some past stuff. We can attribute that to a lot of different things, exhaustion, etc. First time being the finals, all that stuff. But having a guy that's been there, done that a couple of different times in the finals, has lost in the finals, has won a couple, obviously, is going to help you. That experience is going to help you. I think the thing about KD is this team shouldn't be thinking in short-term increments like this because of the youth of their two stars. And that's where the monkey wrench comes in. It's not that Kevin Durant would not cure a lot of problems that Boston has. Now, sure, to Kaufman's point, you would take away one of their biggest advantages, which is their depth, specifically their guard depth, if they were to trade away Marcus Smart or Derek White, or you fill in whatever name you want to fill in. Yeah, one of their biggest assets as a team is how deep they are, especially at the guard spot and especially defensively. But you also would create a new advantage for you, and that is maybe the best, wing scoring duo in the NBA at that particular time. Now, I'm not going to say that, but you'd have a pretty good case to say that if you wanted to. I'm not going to go out on that limb quite yet because we haven't seen it yet. But having Tatum and Durant as two of your five players on the floor would be pretty fun to watch. I'm not going to lie. But you can't guarantee anything. Nothing in the NBA is guaranteed. Nothing in sports is guaranteed. Nothing in life is guaranteed. But I think the one hang up I think a lot of us have, Steve, is this team, because of how much success they've had at such an early part of their window, you're almost doing yourself a disservice by trading for Kevin, because you're trading a big long-term outlook for potential short-term success. But again, neither one of these are guaranteed. And if neither one of them are guaranteed, you might as well hang on to what you got. Am I making a little bit of sense with that?
Well, thanks for getting really philosophical with us there, but life.
Well,
very spiritual.
I actually minored in philosophy in college, so I'm equipped to deal with this.
Sort of afraid to leave the house now.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Immanuel Kant would agree with you. Look, first of all, second of all, first of all was the philosophy. You can't include, if you're trading Jaylen Brown, you're not including Marcus Smart. That's where it ends. You can't trade both those guys. If you trade Marcus Smart, it alters your defense in a way that, forget about it, doesn't happen. It's the defense is what kept them in and allowed them to win some games and overcome some of their issues. You saw it down the stretch. Defense is the backbone of this team. And Marcus Smart is a huge part of that. You can be upset with his shot selection, but I would suggest that goes back to what happens when the offense falls apart. That's where that comes from. Marcus Smart is rarely a problem when the ball is moving and popping, when guys are getting it, giving it up and getting it back. Marcus Smart ain't a problem. And what he gives you defensively, the edge he gives you, the size at the point guard position, is immeasurable. Also, and it ties into everything else they do. Having the second big, which allowed them to have positional size, and the addition of Al Horford was huge. But anyway, you can't, if you're giving away Jaylen Brown, you cannot give up Marcus Smart too. Deal breaker.
Mm-hmm.
But look, yeah, I totally agree that you have to investigate it, because look, you can look at age and all those things. You're guaranteed Jaylen Brown for 2 more years. You don't know beyond that. No one knows what the landscape will look like. I think things will be fine as long as this team wins. I think things will be fine. If this team starts to lose, if it starts to fall short of expectations, then I think you're bringing every possibility into play. And as far as the age thing goes, Kevin Durant, his game will translate well to being older. He'll always be able to say, "Hi, I'm Kevin Durant. I'm 7 feet tall. I'm going to shoot over you. There's nothing you can do about it. And there's a great likelihood I will make this shot." So, that's why when you have a guy like that, who is one of the rare scorers in the history of the NBA, that's why you're looking at this so hard. That's why you're considering trading a young all-star caliber player who's going to get better in Jaylen Brown. That's why you even consider it, because it's a Kevin Durant. You didn't consider it. I remember a few years ago when it was like, "Oh, you got to trade Jaylen Brown for Jimmy Butler." And I remember writing, "Look, you may already have the next Jimmy Butler here in Jaylen Brown." And I think he's certainly proven his worth. And everyone's going to look at his offense. And yeah, it would be great if he would not dribble the ball off his foot. That would be a good step forward for him. But people got to look at his defense too, and what Jaylen Brown gives you defensively as part of what they run defensively is huge. So yeah, it's a big thing to consider. And the only reason you're considering moving a guy, a young talent like Jaylen Brown, is because it's Kevin freaking Durant.
So Steve, I look at all of this and I could talk myself into a trade for Kevin Durant because, like you said, he's Kevin freaking Durant. As Evan said, him and Tatum side by side, that'd be a lot of fun to watch. There'd also be an element of, boy, he feels like just such a hired gun, bouncing from team to team the way he has in recent years after going to the Warriors and winning titles and then teaming up with Kyrie in Brooklyn. Now where's he going next? It would take a little bit of the shine off, I think, for me, just a little bit. But, for all the different reasons that I could absolutely be called a homer, defensive Marcus Smart being probably very high up on that list in almost everything that the man does. Where I'm not a homer is not wanting this deal to happen, because I talked about, again, the depth. They have the pieces, especially with the additions of Malcolm Brogdon, Danilo Gallinari, addressing some of the weaknesses that they had in the postseason, in particular the finals. They just went to Game 6 of the finals. They are, as things stand right now anyway, healthy going into next year, and hopefully that maintains, and they're for the most part as healthy next season as they were this past year. They're the favorites right now. They are the betting favorites to win a championship right this minute. But above all of that, as you said earlier, you bring in Kevin Durant, you're doing it to win right now. You keep Jaylen Brown and all of that depth that you have that we outlined, you are setting yourself up. And again, this is presuming that Jaylen Brown wants to be here and will re-sign in a couple of years when he's a free agent. And we'll get to this, if you view Jaylen Brown as the ultimate flight risk and you don't believe he wants to be here, then yeah, of course you're going to attempt to get something for him before he goes for nothing. That's a different conversation. And again, we'll get to that one.
Look, it's not about whether you're thinking that Jaylen Brown doesn't want to be here. I don't mean to interrupt that. I want to cut that part off. It's not that you don't think he wants to be here. The question is if the team doesn't meet expectations.
Right.
So that's the part that you're bringing in, and there's nothing certain, there's injuries happen, etc. And
all I was really building up to is I want a window, I want a championship window that isn't the next 2 or 3 years before Kevin Durant is, 36, 37 years old. I want to see what Brown and Tatum in their primes together look like. And hopefully, obviously, they will from a contractual standpoint. I want to see what like last year was the first year that we had a playoff run out. And I'm not saying there would have been other years they would have been as true a title contender as they were last season. Last year was really a perfect storm in a lot of ways, that second half of the year and into the playoffs. But every year prior for the last X number of years, there was a key injury or two that time of year where you said, probably not going to happen this year. They don't have X. That excuse was gone last year. It didn't happen, I know, but that excuse was gone. We got a taste of what it could look like. I want a championship window for the better part of a decade, like the Warriors have had, like the Spurs had for 2 decades. Like, when you've got the talent, they have the talent. I want to see what it looks like.
Well, the part you're leaving out, when you look at the saying that right now they have a long or a wide championship contender window, is Al Horford. He was a huge part of what this team was able to do this year. Like we said before, his mere presence allowed everyone to move over a chair, and all of a sudden it gave you. I know I wrote about this a while back. It took Jason Tatum and went him from a power forward to now he has a size advantage at the 3 spot. It took Jaylen Brown and moved him from 3 to 2, and now he's got a size advantage there. And you've got with Marcus Smart starting and not being concerned about the Kemba Walker's injury availability, all those things, and Kyrie Irving before that. Insert multiple issues here, although still remains one of the great talents in the game, which makes his whole saga kind of sad. But Al Horford was a huge part of what you do. And look at the effect that having Al Horford had on Rob Williams, who had a fantastic year. So, your window right now, unless you can develop or deal for more size, your championship window with this core is how long Al Horford lasts, which is why it's imperative of this team to either develop from within or find a way to get Al Horford break minutes during the season so that he's ready and able during the postseason to give you everything he can, which is quite a bit, as we've seen.
I'm getting a little off track, but could Grant Williams be that guy? In the way, like for years, Brad Stevens, like we used to call him Grant, Al Horford light. And a lot of that was the intellect, but part of it was the style of play as well. Could Grant Williams, I know they're not the same frame and shape and size and all that, but could he develop into that guy?
He can't develop into the exact guy because the difference is Al Horford's size. Grant Williams can get out and defend and body up people. He's not going to protect the rim like Al can. And Al, at being able to protect the rim, is what allows Rob Williams to use his borderline unique skills to get out and guard on the perimeter when he has to. That's, the Celtics defensive switchability is what really concerns. When you talk to NBA coaches, they'll tell you that that's the part about the Celtics that really concerns them. Their ability to get out and defend in multiple ways. It concerned the hell out of the Warriors. I know we've discussed this before, but in 2018, the Warriors were happy as hell that the Celtics blew Game 7 against the Cavaliers at home here, because they were concerned like mad about what Boston could do defensively, what they were able to do against that team. The Warriors like to move without the ball and all that, and the Celtics were good enough to say, "Yeah, keep moving. We'll just, we'll slide over and guard the next guy." So.
I just want to, Adam, I think you brought up something earlier about trading for KD, and one of the reasons why you don't want to do that is because he feels like a hired gun. Can we all agree that's the silliest reason not to trade for Kevin Durant, because he feels like a hired gun? That should not be.
I'm not saying that's a good reason to not trade for him. It was more from the standpoint of rooting for a guy like Kevin Durant, to carry your team to a championship sort of feels, God, there's so much ego in this statement, but it feels like it should be beneath the Celtics. Like it feels like
winning a championship is what the Celtics is all about. This is exactly.
But he feels like you're a Celtic fan, right?
Yes.
Okay, here's my question.
Yeah.
If the Celtics win a championship, win the 2023 NBA championship, with Kevin Durant being a star on that team, are you telling us that you would miss the parade because you have to see you're being treated for depression?
Right. But that's what I'm saying. I could talk myself into it and it would be fun to watch and everything, but it wouldn't feel the same. It would feel, I don't feel like there are a lot of Celtics
better than not winning a championship.
like I don't feel, I mean, Sure, I get it. I certainly get it. And obviously then having more rings than the Lakers and all of that stuff, like there's an upside. There's definitely an upside, but it feels, and people will clap back and say 2007 when I say this statement. It feels more like buying a championship when you're getting a Kevin Durant, that's Kevin Durant now. I feel that way more about Kevin Durant now than I would have felt in Kevin Durant, what was it, 2016? Like that was a different Kevin Durant leaving OKC before he went to Golden State than it
Did
is.
you spend when the Celtics traded for Kevin Durant for Kevin Garnett?
Did I pine over Al
Did
Jefferson?
you spend 2 weeks in the fetal
Ryan
position
Gomes.
because they'd
Didn't feel
they'd
right
dealt
without
away
Ryan
Al Jefferson?
Gomes.
No, because you know what it was? Kevin Garnett didn't want to leave Minnesota. I appreciated his stick-to-itiveness. He was as committed to the cause as anybody. Durant, you know what? That transitions well to this question. And this goes back a little bit to some of what you wrote about with this potential owners meeting with Durant and the Nets. I just want to know what's important to him. And look, I don't know Kevin Durant. Obviously, I've never talked to him. I just want to know what ultimately right now at whatever, 34, 35 years old, what is important to Kevin Durant? Because if it was rings above all else, he would just stayed with the Warriors and kept winning. If it was playing with his buddies, well, that's why he teamed up with Kyrie in Brooklyn. So now he wants out. He wants out again. And I'm not even talking about all the social media stuff and burner accounts and, responding to Kendrick Perkins or other critics. I just want what is the end all be all? What he just seems fickle. What is important to Kevin Durant, do you think?
I don't know. Next question. Now, seriously, I would say that what's important to him is kind of a moving target. From all evidence we have, obviously I'm not going to, sit and tell you, oh, I think this is what he's thinking.
Right.
Unless we have evidence to show what he's thinking, then we can discuss that. But yeah, I think it's a moving target. Among the possibilities, the whole Kyrie thing, by all accounts, he's still fine with Kyrie. Although last year, Kyrie's decisions certainly impacted the Nets.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of what happened at the end of the season with the Nets, was it Kyrie's decisions earlier in the year or Joe Harris's injury or Ben Simmons's back/skull that impacted the Nets opportunities last year? Do the Nets beat as close as a 4-game sweep was in terms of each game, the point totals? Do the Nets with a reasonably healthy Simmons and with a healthy Joe Harris defeat the Celtics in the first round? Are we having this conversation?
Right.
Is there a parade going through Coney Island?
Sure.
Led by Joey Jaws Chestnut.
If Kevin Durant's shoe size is a half size smaller, was there a parade the year before when they lost that game 7 against the Bucks? So absolutely, it's obviously a very fair question. I wonder what's most important to him. And the other thing is too,
I would
people
say
talk,
winning.
is it? Well, here's the other thing. Like people keep saying this, or at least have kept saying when this was maybe a more prominent topic. Well, Jaylen Brown has 2 years left in his contract. You're getting Kevin Durant with 4 years left in his contract. Who's to say Kevin Durant would come to Boston and stick around for 4 years as opposed to asking out? I mean, there's a track record here.
No, I can't deny that, but you also can't deny the fact that Kevin Durant also enjoys winning. He went to Golden State to go win championships and did so. I think maybe it might be winning on his terms, but it's not like he went to a team that was bad. He went to a team with his friend Kyrie, got James Harden, and we're about to win a whole bunch of games until people got hurt. So we don't know what's in Durant's head. That's impossible. He doesn't really communicate like that, and I don't think a lot of people do anyway. I think they want to play their cards pretty close to the vest. But we can't sit here and say that Kevin Durant doesn't care about winning basketball games.
Oh, I'm not saying he doesn't care. I just wonder if it's the most important
thing.
The
thing is, we're sitting here trying to figure out, the psychology here. And I remember writing this. The only reason that the Nets hired Steve Nash as coach was because Sigmund Freud wasn't available. I mean,
we have Kant and Freud in this podcast. This is
and if you listen to Kyrie Irving at the time, they had a bunch of coaches anyway.
Yeah, I mean, no, seriously. Hey, again, if you want to switch this to philosophy, I can finally use that, that work from college all those years ago. You know,
Well, I like to make the joke, Steve, that I majored in communications, but I minored in both philosophy and psychology. So it's three different shades of I almost swore, bull.
yeah. Well, I went to college to be a lawyer, so and to try to play basketball. So, hi, welcome to a two-time loser.
We've all failed at
I didn't. I didn't.
I sense you could have been a
I didn't
lawyer. I think
fail
you
on being
chose
a
not to
lawyer.
be.
I guess I pulled out of it. Someone
Well,
did.
right, that's what I'm saying. I think that
Story from the school
maybe you couldn't
paper.
have been a professional basketball player, but I bet you could have been a lawyer.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Almost. Well, anyway, it's a long story. But yeah, no, yeah, I'd be wealthy now. Damn, I gotta think about that.
There you go. File it away.
Boy, guys, I gotta go. I got something
Yeah,
to do.
yeah, let me get that LSAT work in.
Let's keep going with the psychology, and we've spent a lot on the Kevin Durant side. Let's talk about the Jaylen Brown side, because we've heard everything at this point. Jaylen Brown doesn't want to be in Jason Tatum's shadow. He's unhappy with the Celtics being in trade reports over the years, or reported reports for the likes of Kawhi Leonard and Anthony Davis, and obviously now Kevin Durant. And how does he feel about that? And you get the SMH tweets from him and all sorts of different things, liking tweets from fans about being disrespected in Boston, and harkening back to the days of getting, ownership getting booed on draft night when he was selected. There are a lot of things we could talk about, obviously, with Brown. And where we've sort of come to a head, or potentially on the verge of coming to a head, is with all of this discussion with Kevin Durant stuff recently, like our own Sherrod Blakely, who's part of the CLNS family, has the A-List podcast. He wrote an article, I think it was for Bleacher Report, about how, don't worry about Jaylen Brown. He'll be fine. He'll play through all this if he's still a Celtic when next year starts, but he's not going to forget it either. He's going to remember this. And then Jackie McMullen, the Hall of Famer, Jackie Mack, she was on TV the other night and was asked, how disrespected or how offended or how whatever should Jaylen feel right now. And she more or less said, oh, stop. Like, this is the dumbest thing in the world. He's a professional. He's a man. He understands the business. You're in a trade conversation. Maybe if it's even legit, you're in a trade conversation for Kevin Durant. Like, I don't think that's all that disrespectful. So how do we suppose Jaylen Brown does feel right now?
Like I said, I think if this team comes out and plays well, they will be fine. He will be fine. If this team comes out and is not meeting expectations, it's all on the table. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's a case of he's upset about any of this stuff or is or isn't. That's that's a temporal issue. Depends on the date and time, mm-hmm. and what's going on with the team. Guys, they're allowed to have moods, and those moods are allowed to change. But look, this past year, I think Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum like playing together. I think they like the idea of being the two young guns and on the wing and leading this team and trying to win a championship together. I think that's like a really important goal for them, that they both share that ideal. But when they're talking in January about having meetings on the road about we need to do better, we need to get on the same page better, that means that they didn't feel they were on the same page. Mm-hmm. So, I'm not saying that there were things that were broken or wrong, but they realized that they needed to be better at that. So things weren't perfect even after the years they've been playing together. And yeah, they do need to learn, it's better for them to play off each other more efficiently than they have been, and certainly better than they did during the finals. So, all those things are in play, but I wouldn't make any definitive statement. And the last thing I'm going to do is try to psychoanalyze a guy of Jaylen Brown's intellect based on a 3-letter tweet. Yeah. I mean, it's, dude, there's 1,000 things he could have meant with that. And unless someone talks to him and he tells you what he meant, everything else is BS.
He might have just said something to record on the DVR and the thing crapped out. Didn't work. He was just upset.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, He could have gotten, it could have been what you read about that they, at that time, were ceasing production of the Choco Taco. You know?
Maybe he's just really upset that Batgirl's not going to be released by Warner Brothers. It could have been anything.
Who isn't?
Hey, Michael Keaton was supposed to be Batman in that, so I'm
legitimately upset about it, to be honest.
Like, that's no joke.
Just because I wanted to see.
Check, please.
I just wanted to see Keaton as the Cape Crusader again. Now I got to wait for the Flash movie. Go ahead, Ev.
Well, my point being is Steve kind of brought up a point that he had in his piece a couple of days ago about how maybe one of the sources you had spoken to, Steve, that it could have been a way for Brooklyn maybe to cause some upheaval between the front office of the Celtics and Jaylen Brown, that, you know, his name has been floated in trades. Do you think there's a actual, you know, legitimate validity to that, or was that just an idea floated out there by someone to maybe just give some perspective on as to why this leaked out at that time?
Look, that's what a couple of people I spoke to were speculating, inferring. A couple of people involved with the NBA, like, you know, they're convinced, hey, that was Brooklyn's way of trying to goose the market, trying to get people to pay attention to what has become a stagnant market for Kevin Durant, and also like, hey, and first of all, to assume that it definitely came from the Nets, I don't think it came from the Celtics, but to assume that it definitely came from the Nets organization, that could be off base as well. There are other people involved in this. You know, there are agents, there are friends, there are all kinds of people that are involved tangentially in this kind of process. So, you know, who knows? But that's what the feeling of some people in the NBA is. And there were people that told me, that disputed with me and have in the past, that the Jaylen Brown, Derek White, and a first-round pick offer was ever truly on the table. I'm not sure if it was. It's quite possible that was, hey, would you do this? But it's quite possible that it wasn't as well. I mean, there are a lot of trade discussions that happen of, hey, you know, we'd like to be in on the Kevin Durant thing. Who on our team interests you? Mm-hmm. And they can say, well, you know, Jaylen Brown and whatever. Okay, well, what would it take? That's not to say that Jaylen Brown was offered. You know, you're discussing this, you're discussing parameters. And it's not like, will you trade us Kevin Durant for this, this, and this? That's a hard offer. Most of the time, it never gets to a hard offer. Most of the time, it's all, you know, most trade discussions aren't even centered on a specific player. Generally, it's, you know, someone from a team, and doesn't even have to be the GM, calls another team and says, hey, you know, who on our team do you like? You know, what would you give up for that guy? What kind of thing what would you be talking for that? And it's a conversation, and you find out not just on what could be a potential trade with that team, but also you get a sense of what your player is worth in the marketplace, so that if you talk to another team about down the line in a week or a month later, you have an idea of what your player is, how he's perceived around the league. The way that I find out about deals generally is, and I think we discussed this one of the last times we did one of these, was that I'll get calls from teams, from personnel directors, from GMs, just from people I've known over the years, and they'll ask questions about a guy. And that's how, like, I forget exactly what year it was it the 13-14 season? When I get a call, people are asking me about Rajon Rondo. Mm-hmm. You know, do I know that there's definitely going to be a Rajon Rondo trade? No, but I know he's available. I know the teams are trying to get in line to get in on him. So I know he's not unavailable. And certainly at that point, that was after the Celtics big trade with Brooklyn, everyone was available. So, you know, that's how you find stuff out. But things change so rapidly. And to sit here and say, look ahead and say, this window will be there if you make X move, or it'll be there if you make no move, going to kind of go off on this again, but remember in the year that the Celtics, it was 2017, that summer, they signed Gordon Hayward, who was the prime free agent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was signed. He's going to go play with Al Horford, and he's going to play with
Isaiah Thomas.
With Isaiah Thomas. And this is the team he's going to, and boy, this is going to fit. By the time, he gets here, Isaiah Thomas is gone, Kyrie Irving is in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then game 1, 5 minutes in, he goes down for the year.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, the Celtics that summer had drafted Jason Tatum. The Celtics thought Jason Tatum was going to be good. They didn't know he was going to be that good, that fast. If they had known he was going to be that good, that fast, do they spend that kind of money on Gordon Hayward? No, they don't do it. They spend the money upgrading elsewhere.
Mm.
So, yeah, I mean, it's things change, and the moves you think are, oh, this is a definitive move, this is what you'll be. An injury can happen, or just someone getting an opportunity and taking advantage of it the way that Jason Tatum did. That altered your setup. Not only, so when Gordon Hayward comes back the next year, he's not only not fully the player that you want him to be, that he wants to be, but you've also got some duplication of services. Yeah, it can be a strange setup.
So real reports, fake reports, exaggerated reports, I don't know. Whether Jaylen Brown laughs at this stuff versus it keeps him up all night every night, I don't know that either. How do you suppose, or how do you know how Brad Stevens is handling this internally?
I think you kind of, you go day by day. I think the last time I spoke to him was in Las Vegas during Summer League. I think he's pretty well relaxed with the situation, because he knows that, if he does nothing, this is going to be a very good basketball team. If he can find the moves, a move or two that he really likes, it can be a better basketball team. I mean, he left the season as an NBA finalist and added 2 players that everyone believes will help this team, and he did not give up a rotation player to get either of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's a good spot to be in. I still think they need to, either add another big person, or they have to hope that one can emerge out of what they have to give Al Horford and Rob Williams the significant rest that they need during the year to just not be overplayed. But I think Brad Stevens is in a great position. He doesn't have to do anything. And even as regards the need to pick up another big, he can wait on that. It's not going to cost him to wait into the season in November, December, January. Adding an important pickup then can be, just as helpful.
But does he have to smooth anything over with Jaylen Brown, or is this just the way it works?
Excuse me. Look, every player needs to be, needs to know that the team is on his side.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think because, maybe because his name has been out there. And that's to assume, by the way, to say that he needs to smooth things over with Jaylen Brown, that he hasn't already discussed things with him. I'm certain he has.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, look, there's, it's a business, but it's also a business where there are human beings involved. And to think that chemistry doesn't matter, you'd be lying to yourself. So, yeah, I think that they'll have discussions, and it's important, the discussions that Ime has with Jaylen as well. Excuse me. I need
Fun fact of it, before we came on, just to speak on how generous our guests, typically are with their time, and Steve is no exception. I said to him coming in, do you have a hard out on the clock? Do we need to be done by a certain time? And he just said, just make sure I don't fall out of my chair, basically. If I go over, I think I'm done. Are you all right?
Yeah, well, yeah.
I just want to make sure you're good.
Again, I'm sorry, people, if you're just tuning in, I did my 4-mile intervals before this, and that's why I'm sweating.
Pressured on like Adam.
It's not because under these, this grilling I'm getting from these two excellent journalists.
We're coming at Steve right now.
We're really hitting you with the hardest of questions.
Just the light. Where were you on the night in question?
Yeah. I have one more anyway that I want to get in here, and Ev, I don't know what you've got left, but just we keep talking about, hey, bet online, the Celtics are the championship favorites. To you, because there are a lot of people saying, like, I still get it in my mentions every once in a while on Twitter, hey, by the way, if Chris Middleton had been healthy, maybe your Celtics go out in round 2. Maybe. Do you, looking at it right now, view the Celtics as the championship favorites, or at least the favorites in the East?
I'd say they're among them, because you don't know what the East is going to look like on opening night right now. Okay. Certainly the Brooklyn situation is
very fluid.
Yeah. And, but I look at Philly as being, fluid as well. How much different are they going to be now that James Harden has, made the commitment that he did? Okay, I'm going to sign for less, etc. But they still need to add bodies there. Miami is still in need of a move or 2 or 3 before the year starts. So, if they were playing tomorrow, I'd say it's Milwaukee and the Celtics. But they're not playing tomorrow. And we don't know what this division is going to look like then. The Celtics are in the conversation, and I think that's probably the best you can ask for. When you go into a year, every team starts the year needing to get better, wanting to improve on where it is. The Celtics aren't different than that, but that they have the players, and they have improved from last year, just in terms of on paper. How's it going to fit? Is Ime going to find minutes for all the people he needs to in the backcourt? Is he going to go away from Peyton Pritchard again and take his shooting off the floor? Which I think, kind of cost him a bit in the finals, where he cut his minutes in half, cut his shots in half. And, you didn't have the pressure release valve on those other guys. So yeah, it's too much to be decided, I think, right now.
I think the last thing it seems like this, but I don't know if we all went on record here, but it felt like to me, and even though I pushed back on a few things, it's still, I would not make any trade for Kevin Durant. I don't think the Celtics should even entertain the idea, because of what we talked about in this podcast. But I just wanted to make sure that we all went on the record here, and at least we want to danced around it a little bit, or adamantly said it. But
can I give you a qualifier?
What is that?
Well, I mean, you said I wouldn't make any trade for Kevin Durant. I think we're all
any reasonable one.
I just mean, I think we're all presuming a trade for Kevin Durant would require Jaylen Brown. If in some universe it didn't, sure.
Then fine.
Kevin Durant.
That's not possible.
Yeah.
There's no way, right? See, there's no possible way they could get Kevin Durant without Jaylen Brown in the deal.
Sure, they gave up Jason Tatum and Rob Williams.
There you go.
So you could, but then the Nets would have to move Ben Simmons, right? Like, there's a contractual issue with Tatum.
Yeah, I mean, look, if the Celtics can make a trade for Kevin Durant and not give up too much, I think we've already discussed what too much is.
Yeah.
It's kind of a move you have to make. But and look, and Kevin Durant is already, I spoke to him a few years ago when he signed, when he was signing with Golden State. Boston was a team. He was one of the teams that he took an audience with down in the Hamptons. Mm-hmm. And I spoke to him alone at that summer after he made the move or made that decision. They had a Team USA practice in Las Vegas just after Summer League. And it was in the gym there at the Mendenhall Center, their practice facility there. And he said, yeah, he was really impressed by Boston and likes what they built there. He liked the coach. He liked Brad, all that. And he was really excited when he saw Tom Brady walk through the door. I think he was just saying that to cover because I think he was really excited when he saw Kelly Olynyk. That's just personal.
Well, it was the tie-dye shirt that really did it for him.
But yeah, so, if you can get Kevin Durant and not make yourself and not weaken yourself on the back end, you make that move. Because there's no guarantees no matter what, I think Jaylen Brown is a great player. I think Jaylen Brown's going to get better. I think Jaylen Brown is one of those I'm not satisfied kind of people that we talked about before. He's one of those guys, he doesn't look at getting to the NBA as the finish line. He looks at it, I need to get better all the time. And I think he will. But again, Kevin Durant, the problem the Celtics had was they would take the ball and go one-on-one at times and take themselves out of their offense. It was a problem in 2018, 19, 20, and this year. Kevin Durant can take the ball and go and can score. And if he misses, everyone's scrambling. You've got offensive rebound possibilities. And I can see Rob Williams scoring 10 points a game merely on garbage, on, picking up the trash and slipping it through. So yeah, you make it if it's not going to cost you too much. I think every team would look at it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't see it happening. I don't think any of us see it happening. But I am curious.
I'm with you. I think the odds remain that Kevin Durant doesn't get moved. It would take a sea change in what the Nets are seeking to have them move. And again, we don't know what the result of their talks are going to be internally, but it would take a sea change from where they are now and what they're requesting.
With the history of this show, Kevin Durant's going to be traded in about an hour, but hopefully that doesn't happen.
I'll check my phone right now just to make sure.
Exactly. Steve, we always appreciate you joining us, your insights, keeping it light, obviously. And, we'll do it again. Season's right around the corner. We're into August now. So, get those interval workouts in while you can, because you're about to get a whole lot busier.
We'll be fine. That's one of the benefits of the new job is, it allows me to take care of myself in a way that I wasn't able to when I was on the beat at the other place. I always would say that, and over the years, my primary care physician at the Herald. Yeah, that's right. My primary care physician at Mass General wanted me off the beat worse than the readers did.
You might have been right the first time.
That was pretty good. I like that little. That was good.
Might have been the Boss Doctors. I think we've all encountered that in our careers.
Yeah, right. I don't know where that came from.
All right, Ev, always a pleasure, of course, and thank you not only for your contributions on the air, but your production work off of it. And rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. If anyone's still listening to the three of us babbling on, and we'll talk to you again next week. Keep enjoying summer.